Hey, tranquila, what's up? It's the Culture Detective here, investigating your favorite TV shows, and this time I'm back to do a review on La Casa De Papel, or for some reason the English translation is Money Heist, Season 2, or more like Parts 3 and 4. This time we have 8 episodes per part, and apparently Netflix didn't recut these episodes because these episodes are not like 70 minutes long this time. So they stay intact and uncut, thank God. Anyways, La Casa de Papel is a TV show created by Alex Pina, and parts 1 and 2 are about a very elaborate heist that took place at the Royal Mint of Spain, where a group of people enter the mint and force the workers to print money and then get that money. The person who organized this is the professor, and he stays outside the mint, controlling things from the outside, tying loose ends, bugging the cops, etc., etc. And even though some storylines are not as interesting and the plot feels very straightforward and immediate, the first 2 parts are extremely entertaining and fun, and now we have parts 3 and 4, or season 2. Episode 1 is Hemos, Vuelto, or We're Back, and it's a very immediate, action-packed, and dramatic and intense episode. Everything moved at a very fast pace, almost too fast. So it was 2.5 years later, for some reason the asshole Arturo from season 1 became a celebrity of sorts. And he had gained a following of people who believe these robbers are indeed bad, even though a majority of the public seemed to be on the robbers' side. Tokyo and Rio were chilling on an island in Panama, the professor and Raquel were in Thailand, Nairobi and Helsinki were in Argentina, Denver and Monica were in Cambodia, and we have Berlin's best friend, perhaps boyfriend, Martin in Italy. One day, Tokyo decided to leave the island and hang out in the city of Panama City for a while. So Rio gave Tokyo a satellite phone so that both of them could chat with one another from a far distance. The phone got picked up by the Europol, and they sensed the they sent the frickin' military to capture Tokyo and Rio. Rio couldn't escape because he's on an island, but Tokyo escaped and managed to get to Colombia somehow. Somehow ended up in Thailand in the next scene, and then everyone just showed up eventually. Then they went to a chapel in Italy and began to organize their heist in the Bank of Spain in order to force the authorities to release Rio. The ending is super over the top and dramatic, but I guess it's entertaining, so there's that. The team somehow flew zeppelins over Madrid, releasing money. Then the professor hacked pretty much all the big screens in the city and revealed his face and announced that Rio was in trouble. And then suddenly the whole world was on the robber side and decided to protest. Prieto from last season, who got super angry, decided to bring out the army onto the streets. And then the robbers sneaked into the bank pretending to be the army. We also have a few new characters, but they weren't really introduced in the first episode. Also, you can tell that the budget is so much higher because they afforded so many more filming locations and big sets and action sequences. That's how you know the first season did really well. Then quickly afterwards, we have episode 2, Aikido, where they sneak into the bank. Even though some scenes are still super fast-paced, it's still very entertaining and fun. Just give me a sec. Give me a sec. There were complications because the army weren't supposed to enter the bank or any facilities for that matter, so the robbers had to convince the security guards, and that took a while. And because the bank is like 12 times bigger than the Royal Mint and there were over 360 people there, they had to evacuate half of them. Then the plan is set in motion and the heist began. Episode 3 is titled 48 metros bajo el suelo, or 48 meters underground. And it's another really action-packed and eventful episode. The first half is where Tokyo and Nairobi tried to take the governor hostage, and the governor was guarded by 4 other bodyguards. And this spiraled out into a very big fight. And then we have Nairobi and the big guy with the beard who's actually called Bogota, and they try to get some men down 48 meters under the bank to steal the gold. And while I enjoy the intensity of the episode, it's a little bit over dramatic. And that one hostage who refused to go along with Nairobi and Bogota suddenly became really obedient. What happened there? Then we have episode 4, La Hora del Delfín, or the Hour of the Dolphin, and we have a bunch of montages of Bogota and Nairobi in the vault full of water, and then a bunch of flashbacks which didn't feel all that entertaining. There was a scene where Denver almost accidentally killed someone important, but that scene itself isn't actually all that important, it's just there for the shock value, I guess. Over to episode 5, Boom Boom Chow, where things continue to take a bit of a nosedive. Every time the show has the opportunity to write something about female empowerment, the show does it to the fullest extent. I don't mind female empowerment scenes. In fact, I think they're great in concept. But these scenes felt too out of place and forced. Like that very unnecessary scene where Martin, aka Palermo, does this monologue on why he likes gay sex and why women aren't worth loving. I get that the show wants to make his character insane and scary and misogynistic, but the show just ended up making him Berlin 2.0, basically Berlin but even more insane. There's also significantly fewer scenes with the professor. At a lot of times in season 1 the professor had really suspenseful scenes, but I guess he's playing real safe in this season. We also have Inspector Sierra, who's also supposed to be this crazy smart woman, but her character just felt a bit cartoonish. However, I do like the fact that the inspectors in charge of the operation this time are so much more hardcore than in season 1. Things start to get better again on episode 6, Todo, Pareció, Insignificante, or everything seemed insignificant. There are a few things I like about this episode. The fact that the professor had fans all the way across the country who secretly help him is really, really wholesome. The exchange scene towards the end is also very, very, very wholesome as well. We also have a very intense action-packed scene where the police secretly try to gas everyone in the bank with a gas that can put people to sleep. But of course, the professor already knew it before it happened. The team of robbers did something impressive. All in all, a pretty solid episode. Then it's episode 7, Pequeñas, Vacaciones, or a quick vacation. And it's another really strong episode. The first half is incredibly emotionally powerful, and it's kind of funny how when those scenes happened, the hostages were just standing there in the back like, I have no idea what's going on, but okay. The second half is more interesting as we have a new intruder to the bank. An operation and something suspenseful and intense finally happened to the professor and Raquel, and those scenes are phenomenal. They are really, really entertaining. There's one problem I have, and that's the flashbacks. In one of them, the professor had to explain some sort of protocol, and he had to do it while having sex for some reason. But the sexual element doesn't really add anything to the story other than it's just a cool gimmick. The final episode of Season 3, La Deriva, or The Ashtray, is pretty boring in the first half with its sobby breakup stories, but the second half suddenly escalated from 0 to 100, and it's pretty fucking insane. It's also really entertaining to see the robbers troll the police by deceiving them using sound effects, but in the second half everything began to fall apart. The crazy pregnant woman, Inspector Alicia Sierra, had an idea to use Nairobi's son against Nairobi, and it had caused some immense damage. Simultaneously, in the professor side of things, they had to hide from the police, and everything became a super close call. But at the end, there was a huge turn of events that changed everything, and it was heartbreaking, shocking, and incredible. Now we move over to the second half, where we have episode 1, Game Over, which is a pretty okay episode. Someone in the team is heavily injured, and there's a lot of suspense in that scene, and I really like it. I just don't like the scene where they all have disagreements and decided to point guns at one another in a very cheesy way. There's also a lot of corny personal relationship moments in the episode that I don't really care for. There's a lot of sing and dance in the show for some reason. I mean, it's cool at first, because these moments display a lot of eccentricity and character, but now all the singing and dancing just feels kind of gimmicky. Then we have episode 2, La Boda de Berlin, or The Wedding of Berlin. And once again, this episode takes on more of a slow pace, which is totally fine, but nothing all that smart and intelligent had happened on this episode. It's still mostly reinforcing the idea of, wow, Martin is crazy, and whoa, Denver, Monica, Tokyo, and Rio are having a relationship troubles, and that's basically the entire episode. Moving on to episode 3, Lección de Anatomía, or Lesson of Anatomy, and it's another pretty middle-of-the-road episode. Not that it's slow-paced, but it definitely doesn't progress as much as before. There's also this really dispensable storyline of Rio breaking up with Tokyo, and then Monica broke up with Denver. Now Rio and Monica are getting along, and Tokyo is flirting with Denver. The whole love square thing is getting weird, and romance is not one of the strong suits of the show, obviously. Episode 4, Suspiros de España, or in English, Pasadoble. I don't know what the word means, or why is this the translation, but okay. Anyways, this is the first episode that actually feels like it's getting somewhere going. When Gandia, one of the security guards, escaped and tried to kill all the people on the robbers team. He's actually an assassin, and he's really good at his job. So that results in some pretty entertaining and suspenseful cat and mouse chase scenes. We also have the professor taking back control, and that's always something good to see. Then we have episode 5, Minutos antes, or 5 minutes ago. And it's a really action-packed episode where the entire gang is under the threat of Gandia, the assassin. And while yes, it's very unrealistic, but hey, it's Money Heist. It's the House of Paper. Who cares? It's really entertaining, and I actually kind of enjoy this episode. And I know a lot of people hate the gunfight scene. I personally don't. I don't think it's great because it's, again, really unrealistic. Gandia is wearing a bulletproof vest, and everyone was aiming for his chest, I guess. But somehow the other 6 people also dodged his bullets. However, anyways, aside from this scene, it's still a pretty entertaining episode. However, the singing and dancing returns on episode 6, Ko Technico. We have 2 separate scenes that involve singing and dancing respectively, and they feel out of place and kinda gimmicky. Not enough to be a trademark style or anything. This episode just so happens to be the most intense and dramatic episode of this part so far, with a really shocking ending, which I like. It's trying to do this Game of Thrones thing, where just when you think a character's okay, the character gets killed. So yeah, it's not the most original thing I've ever seen, but it's still admirable, I guess. There are also a few scenes that are kind of out of character in my opinion, like Martin, aka Palermo, suddenly being obedient again, and he's the calm one now. Why? He was extremely chaotic a few hours ago. Then we have Gandia, who was supposed to be a professional assassin hero, but he acts like a psychopath for some reason. But still, this episode is pretty entertaining. And then we have the penultimate episode, Tumbar la Carpa, or Strike the Tent, and it's seriously a great episode. Almost every single scene is pretty much fantastic. What goes on inside the bank is really intense, where Gandia and Tokyo were in a really sticky situation, but what's more awesome is what goes on outside the bank. Finally, the professor is the professor again, and is creating these ideas to attack the police. First, he held a funeral. Then, he published a few videos of Rio talking about his torture, someone who helped the police torture Rio, and another video of him talking about Raquel. And what happened outside of the bank afterwards with the overwhelming amount of public support is fucking glorious, especially set to Arcade Fire's Wake Up. At the end, it is episode 8, Plan Paris, and it's a really clever and climactic ending for season 4. It's a little surprising to see that they're not planning to end the heist on season 4, but I guess that answers the question of why some of the episodes are rather slow in this part. Anyways, on this episode, the professor formulates a very elaborate and smart plan to rescue a team member from the outside of the Bank of Spain. And honestly, the plan is genius, and it's incredibly entertaining to see how it's being pulled off. It requires a lot of resources and cooperation from both inside and outside of the bank, and it's actually insane. We also have Inspector Alicia Sierra becoming the big villain at the end, which is interesting. I wasn't a huge fan of her as the inspector, as she seems just like a crazy, carefree woman who's a little cartoony, but now, as a stray villain, she's actually more intimidating. I also like the direction of the show is going with Arturo, even though not much has happened to him, but seeing people beat him down is so damn satisfying. So, overall, La Casa de Papel Season 3 and 4 are also pretty good. They're not as good as Seasons 1 and 2 because the first two seasons are more compact and easier to follow and well developed. These two seasons are really over the top ambitious, and it prioritizes spectacle over anything else. There are even a few unrealistic scenes that put a lot of fans off. Then there's the romance element, which is still really uninteresting. However, I really don't get why these two seasons are getting so much hate. It's still not that bad, like at all. The plan is really fun and complex, the stakes in the action scenes are so much higher, and there's an emphasis on the police versus the robbers, which made the situation so much more intense and suspenseful, especially when the police are going off the rails and off the books and off the law. The production is clearly better now that the budget is bigger. I just don't really get why there's so many singing and dancing scenes. And Season 4 did start off a bit slow, and there are also a few episodes in the middle of Season 3 which is meh. But still, it's a pretty good show. My favorite is Season 3 Episode 8 La Deriva, that or the second last episode Tumbar la Carpa. And my least favorite is Season 4 Episode 2 La Boda del Perdín. I'm saying La Casa de Papel Seasons 3 and 4 are cool stuff, and I'm giving them a strong 7 out of 10. It's really not that bad, but you really can't ignore the flaws in the script as well. So, have you watched La Casa de Papel Seasons 3 and 4? From 1 to 10, how much did you rate it? Like, if you like it, and subscribe if you want more, and thanks for watching. Next up, I will review JoJo Part 5, so stay tuned for that stuff.